What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved stars walks into a daytime talk show, carrying a storm behind his smile? When the laughter of a live audience fades into uneasy silence, and a man known for his composure begins to crumble in front of millions. This is that moment. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Stage View, hit that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Trust me, you're going to have a lot to say after this one. It was a crisp New York morning, the kind where the city felt alive, the chatter outside ABC studios blending with the hum of camera crews preparing for another episode of The View. The studio was bright, the colors warm, but underneath that glow, tension was brewing. The producers whispered to one another. They knew this wasn't just any guest. Will Smith, actor, musician, cultural icon, was about to sit in the hot seat. He was there to promote a new film. But everyone knew that wasn't the real reason the audience was buzzing. Ever since the world had witnessed that infamous Oscar night, the slap that echoed across pop culture, Will had been a man divided. Some still loved him. Others never forgave him. And now he was walking into The View, a place where no question stayed safe for long. When the cameras rolled, Joy Behar leaned forward with that trademark grin, the one that always promised trouble wrapped in humor. "Will," she began, her tone disarming. "First of all, it's great to see you. You look calmer. Different, maybe. Therapy working." The audience laughed, unsure whether to cheer or hold their breath. Will smiled, but it was the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Yeah," he said softly. I'm doing the work, Joy. You know? One day at a time." The other hosts, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, and Ana Navarro, exchanged glances. They sensed it too. The fragility. The weight. Joy nodded. "That's good. Because I gotta tell you, after that whole Oscar thing, I thought, there's no way that Will Smith, Mr. Fresh Prince, just did that. You shocked the hell out of us, honey." The crowd murmured. Some laughed nervously. Will's eyes flickered, his jaw tightening for just a second. He forced another smile. "Yeah, I shocked myself too." The silence that followed felt heavier than the lights above them. The camera zoomed in, catching the faint tremor in Will's hand resting on his knee. Joy didn't notice, or maybe she did. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly. "I mean, if you could go back, would you still defend your wife like that? Or would you handle it differently?" The question hit the room like a gust of cold air. Will blinked. Slowly. He looked down, then back up, the audience watching his every breath. "I think about that moment every day," he said finally, his voice low but trembling. "Not because of what I did, but because of what it cost me. My peace. My name. My family's sense of safety." Joy softened. "But Will, you understand, people saw it as ego. You looked like a man who lost control." He nodded, almost whispering. "I was a man who lost control." The words hung there, raw, unpolished. The studio audience was dead silent. Even the co-hosts seemed frozen, their smiles fading into something like concern. Will leaned forward, his hands clasped. "You spend your life trying to be the good guy, the role model. You give your best, and one night, one mistake, becomes the only thing anyone wants to remember you for." His voice cracked, just enough to reveal the pain behind it. Joy's usual sharpness softened further. "You know, I've been in this business a long time. I've seen people fall apart under less. But you didn't just fall apart. You made the whole world watch you bleed." Will's eyes glistened. "Yeah," he said. "And now I'm trying to figure out how to heal in front of them too." A faint murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone in the back clapped once, then stopped, unsure if it was the right moment. But Joy wasn't done. Her instincts as a host kicked in, the part of her that knows when a moment's about to explode. "So tell me this," she said, leaning closer. "If Chris Rock were sitting right here, what would you say to him?" The entire room tensed. The air thickened. Will inhaled, his fingers twitching slightly as if gripping invisible anger. "I'd say," he paused, his voice lowering into something raw, almost whispering, "I'm sorry, not just for what I did to him, but for what I did to myself that night." The audience gasped. A few people nodded, others whispered. Joy nodded, but her eyes gleamed, she wanted more. "And Jada? Does she feel sorry too?" Will's expression changed. A subtle shift, the kind that only happens when a wound gets touched again before it's healed. He exhaled, slow and shaky. "You'd have to ask her that," he said. Joy smiled thinly. "Oh, come on, Will. You two are a team, right? You stand together on everything, even the bad stuff." Will's lips pressed into a line. His eyes darkened, the calm slipping away. "Joy," he said quietly, Sometimes being a team doesn't mean you're on the same page every day. Sarah Haynes quickly jumped in, sensing the tension. Let's maybe take a break for a second. But we'll cut in, his voice louder now. No, it's fine. Everyone wants to talk about Jada. About her. Like I didn't have a mind of my own that night. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Joy tried to ease him back. Hey, we're just asking what everyone's thinking. That's all. Yeah, Will said bitterly. And that's the problem. Everyone's thinking. Nobody's listening. His tone was sharp, his composure cracking just enough for the cameras to catch it. The energy shifted, from polite curiosity to tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The producers in the booth exchanged frantic looks. One whispered, "We need to cut to commercial soon." But the host table was alive now, the air charged. Joy leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "You sound angry, Will." He turned toward her. "Wouldn't you be?" he snapped. "If everyone decided who you are based on your worst 5 seconds." The audience murmured again, louder this time. Joy tilted her head. "You're human. You made a mistake. But it's hard to feel sorry for a man who walked on stage at the Oscars and hit someone for telling a joke." Will's jaw clenched. "You think that moment was about a joke?" Joy blinked. "Wasn't it?" Will leaned forward, his voice trembling but powerful. "It was about years of being the punchline. Years of swallowing it with a smile. That night wasn't about Chris. It was about me trying not to break, and failing." The studio was silent again. Even Joy seemed to hesitate. And then, something in Will's face shifted. His eyes glazed for a second, and his breathing quickened. He ran a hand through his hair, whispering to himself, "Man, I shouldn't have come here today." A few gasps. Cameras zoomed in. Joy looked startled. "Will." But he wasn't listening anymore. The facade was crumbling, right there in real time. He looked out toward the audience, faces blurring under the lights, and said softly, "I thought I could handle it. But I can't." The screen faded to black as the producers frantically called for a break. The crowd erupted, not in applause but in confused murmurs. And just like that, the view had turned into something no one expected. The scene of Will Smith's emotional unraveling. To be continued. The air inside the studio was electric. Even during the commercial break, no one moved. The audience whispered in anxious clusters. The crew scrambled behind the cameras, unsure whether to comfort their guest or let him breathe. Will sat motionless, staring at the floor, his microphone still on though the broadcast had cut away. Joy Behar leaned toward him, her voice softer now, almost maternal. "Hey, Will, you okay, honey? Maybe we went too far." He didn't answer. His hands were clasped, trembling slightly, the muscles in his jaw flexing with every silent breath. The producer's voice buzzed through the earpieces. "We're back in 30 seconds. Everyone, get it together." Sarah Haynes whispered, "Maybe we shouldn't keep going with this topic. We can pivot to the movie, yeah?" Joy hesitated. She looked at Will, the man whose laughter once filled movie theaters, now sitting before her like a ghost of himself. "No," she said finally. "He came here to talk. Let him talk." The red light blinked on. Cameras rolled. The world was watching again. Joy's smile returned, but it was strained. "Welcome back, folks. We're here with Will Smith, who's been opening up about life, redemption, and, well, some very real emotions." Will lifted his head slowly, the studio lights reflecting off the moisture in his eyes. Joy continued, her tone careful. "Will, before the break, you said something that stuck with me. You said you're still trying to figure out how to heal in front of everyone. What does that look like for you?" Will's lips parted. He took a deep breath. "It looks like this," he said, gesturing vaguely around him. "Me trying to stay calm while the world still calls me a monster." The audience gasped quietly. Sonny Hostin leaned in gently. "You're not a monster, Will. You're a man who made a mistake." He smiled faintly, though it didn't last. "Mistakes don't trend for 2 years, Sonny. They die quietly. Mine didn't." Joy interjected. "But that's the price of fame, isn't it? You live big, you fall big." Will turned toward her, his eyes sharper now. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't wake up every morning reliving that night?" Joy tried to maintain her composure, but the fire in his tone caught her off guard. "We all saw what happened. But what people didn't see, what was going through your head? What broke inside you that moment?" He exhaled slowly. "It wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. I'd been performing my piece for so long, I forgot how to actually have it." The audience listened, captivated. He continued, "When Chris made that joke, I laughed at first. That's what I always do, make it easy for people. But when I saw Jada's face, I just snapped. It wasn't planned. It wasn't heroic. It was a man breaking open on live TV. A hush settled across the studio. Joy nodded slowly. And now, do you blame her for that moment? Will froze. His eyes flickered toward the cameras, then back at Joy. I don't blame anyone, he said. But I won't lie, it changed how I see love. How I see loyalty. Joy leaned forward. You think she should have stopped you? His silence was answer enough. Sarah spoke softly. Will, I think what people want to understand is, who are you now? After all this? He looked at her, his face unreadable. I'm someone who's tired of apologizing to people who never forgave me anyway. A wave of gasps echoed. Joy raised an eyebrow. That sounds angry. Maybe it is, he shot back. But it's honest. The room was so quiet that even the hum of the lights felt loud. Then Joy, ever the provocateur, leaned in just a little too close. Will people say you've been living in Jada's shadow lately? That she's been controlling the narrative? Maybe this meltdown we all saw wasn't about Chris Rock at all. Maybe it was about her. The audience collectively inhaled. Will's eyes widened slightly, a flash of disbelief and fury all at once. Be careful, Joy, he said quietly. Oh, come on, she teased, smiling. You've been married a long time. You can handle a little truth. His voice dropped an octave, quiet but deadly serious. You don't know my truth. The tension was unbearable. Even Sunny shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Joy laughed nervously. Relax, Will. We're just having a conversation. He shook his head. No, we're not. You're having a performance. The crowd gasped again. Joy blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? You don't care how I feel, Will said. You care how it looks when I fall apart on your show. The audience murmured louder. The co-hosts were frozen. Joy's smile faded completely now. That's not fair, Will. He leaned back, eyes glistening with a mix of anger and grief. Fair? You think any of this is fair? I lost friends, deals, peace, and all anyone wants is a quote that keeps them trending. The live audience began murmuring, torn between sympathy and shock. Joy tried to steer the energy back. Will, we're just asking the questions the world wants to know. You can't expect people not to talk about what happened. He nodded slowly. Then maybe I should stop talking too. He unhooked his microphone. The sound tech's voice crackled in panic. Don't take it off. We're live. But Will placed it gently on the table, his face unreadable. Joy's voice trembled slightly. Will, you're walking off. He stood up. I came here to tell my story, not to be dissected. The audience erupted in whispers and gasps. Joy looked stunned. You can't just. I can, Will said softly. And I will. He turned toward the crowd, his expression breaking, a strange mix of shame, sadness, and defiance. To everyone watching, I'm sorry you had to see me like this. But I'm human, and I'm done pretending I'm okay. He walked toward the edge of the stage. The audience rose instinctively, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Joy called after him. Will, you can't just walk out of your own redemption story. He stopped, half-turning, eyes blazing. Then maybe redemption's not something you get from TV. He left the set. The audience sat in stunned silence as the cameras tried to follow, catching only glimpses of him backstage. Producers running after him, crew members whispering. Joy turned back to the camera, her voice shaky but controlled. We'll be right back. Cut to commercial. But there was no going back. Behind the stage, Will leaned against a wall, breathing hard. The adrenaline in his body felt like fire. He could hear the faint roar of the audience through the walls. Not cheering, not booing, just a confused, collective exhale. He pressed his palms against his face, whispering to himself. You did it again, man. You lost control. Then, faintly, from behind him, Joy's voice approached. Will. He didn't turn around. Listen, she said softly. You were raw. That's what people want, truth. Don't run from that. He lowered his hands, his voice broken. You don't understand, Joy. The truth's the only thing I've got left, and it's killing me. She stood there for a moment, her usual wit gone. Then maybe that's where you start healing. He looked at her, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Or maybe it's where I disappear. And for the first time that morning, Joy Behar didn't have an answer. The lights dimmed. The cameras stopped rolling. But the real story, the emotional explosion that would flood social media in hours, was just beginning. The studio halls were chaos. Crew members whispered into headsets, producers shouted into phones, and social media staffers scrambled as clips from The View began flooding the internet, before the show had even finished airing. Did you see his face? One assistant gasped, holding up her phone. It's everywhere already, another said, eyes wide. Hashtag Will Smith meltdown is trending. In the dressing room, Will sat alone on a small couch, head buried in his hands. His breathing was uneven. The makeup lights above him flickered softly, casting long shadows across the mirror. His reflection stared back. Not the superstar, not the icon, but a man stripped bare of every layer of control. He whispered to himself, almost like a confession. Why can't I just keep it together? Outside the door, a quiet knock. It was Sarah Haynes. Will, she said gently. It's just me. He didn't answer. She opened the door slowly. I told them to give you a minute. Joy didn't mean to push. Will looked up, eyes red. She meant it. That's what she does. That's what all of this does. Sarah hesitated, her tone low and sincere. You know she likes to provoke, but she didn't want to hurt you. He let out a bitter laugh. It's not her fault. It's mine. Every time I try to speak, it turns into a headline. Every time I try to explain, I just make it worse. Sarah took a few steps closer. You were honest out there. That's not weakness. He looked at her. It feels like it. Meanwhile, in the studio control room, Joy Behar stood with a cup of water in her hand, staring at the monitors replaying the moment. While walking off, the audience's stunned faces, the silence that followed. The producer, a tall man with gray hair and nerves of steel, approached her. Joy, that was intense. She sighed. Yeah, maybe too intense. He raised an eyebrow. You think? She set down her cup, shaking her head. You know what? People always say they want honesty until they see it. Then they call it a breakdown. Do you regret pushing him? Joy hesitated. No, she said finally. But I regret that it broke him on live TV. Before the producer could respond, another assistant burst in. Joy, TMZ just posted it. The full clip. Joy's heart sank. Already, the assistant nodded. It's viral. Twitter, TikTok, everyone's talking about it. Some people are calling it Will Smith's second fall from grace. Others, they're defending him. Joy looked at the screen, watching herself asking that final question. Maybe it was about her? And Will's haunted reaction. She whispered under her breath. What have I done? Back in the dressing room, Will's phone buzzed nonstop. Hundreds of messages. Publicists. Friends. Journalists. Even Jada's name flashed briefly across the screen. But he didn't open it. He couldn't. Sarah watched quietly as he stared at the flood of notifications. He finally said, You know what's crazy? I came here thinking maybe I could rebuild something. A little piece of me. But it's like the world doesn't want me healed. They want me haunted. Sarah sighed. You can't control what people say. Will looked up. Then what's the point of talking at all? For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Joy appeared in the doorway. Sarah stepped back instinctively. Will's eyes hardened slightly. You here to finish the interview? Joy's voice was calm but strained. No, I'm here to apologize. He didn't respond right away. She took a step closer. I pushed too far. I thought I was doing my job, getting to the truth. But I saw your face, Will. And that wasn't a man being interviewed. That was a man bleeding. He exhaled slowly. You're not wrong. Joy looked down, then back at him. The world's already turning it into a circus. You know that, right? He nodded faintly. They always do. Joy rubbed her temples. It's ugly out there. Half the country thinks you lost it again. The other half thinks I ambushed you. He smiled weakly. Maybe they're both right. Joy sat across from him. You've got to get ahead of it, Will. Say something before they twist it. He shook his head. If I talk, they'll twist it anyway. If I stay quiet, they'll call it guilt. Joy sighed. Then what do you want to do? He looked up at her reflection in the mirror. I want to stop performing. Joy frowned. Meaning what? I've spent my whole life trying to be everyone's idea of Will Smith. The funny one. The strong one. The one who fixes everything. But that man doesn't exist anymore. Joy sat quietly, watching him, realizing for the first time that this wasn't just a bad press day. It was a breaking point. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, a message from the executive producer. CNN wants a live statement about the Will Smith incident. 6 p.m. She sighed deeply. They're calling it an incident now. Will chuckled darkly. Yeah, everything's an incident when it makes headlines. Outside, the crowd had gathered by the studio entrance. Reporters were already waiting, cameras flashing. Someone yelled, Will, do you regret walking out? Another shouted, Joy, are you going to apologize on air? The chaos was only growing. Inside, Joy stood. They're not going to let this go. You should leave through the back. Well, stood too. And hide? No. I've done enough hiding. He walked to the mirror, adjusting his jacket, eyes red but defiant. If I go out there now, at least I'll face it as me. Joy hesitated. You sure you're ready for that? He looked at her, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. I wasn't ready for any of this, Joy. Moments later, the studio doors opened. The noise hit him like a wave, reporters shouting, flashes going off, the murmur of fans and critics blending into one chaotic chorus. He stepped into it slowly, each step heavy but deliberate. A reporter yelled, Will, do you have anything to say to Joy Behar? He paused, glancing back at the glass doors where she stood watching him. Then he said, loud enough for the cameras, I don't blame Joy. She asked what everyone's been asking me for years. The truth hurts, but sometimes it's the only thing that sets you free. The crowd buzzed, cameras clicking faster. He walked toward a waiting car, but not before turning to face the reporters one last time. You can write what you want, but I'm done performing for forgiveness. If I'm going to heal, it won't be on your timeline. The door shut behind him. Inside the studio, Joy stood frozen, her reflection caught in the studio glass. The reflection of a woman who, for the first time in her career, didn't know if she'd gone too far. She whispered to herself, he'll never come back from this. But outside, somewhere between shame and liberation, Will Smith was already beginning to, not as the man he used to be, but as someone the world had never truly seen before. The headlines were already spinning. Clips were being edited. Talk shows were calling. But this story, this moment, had taken a life of its own. This part closes the story with the emotional aftermath, public reaction, and the powerful stage view call to action you requested. It's written like a film, with tension, emotion, and reflection, giving the viewer goosebumps as the credits would roll. By the time the sun dipped behind the New York skyline, the world had already chosen sides. Clips from the view flooded every corner of the internet. Slow-motion replays of Will's breaking voice, Joy's piercing questions, and the haunting image of him walking off set. News anchors analyzed his every word, commentators debated his state of mind, and social media exploded into war. Hashtag Will Smith meltdown. Hashtag Joy Behar crossed the line. Hashtag stage view moments, a tag born from viewers who had seen the raw footage and couldn't look away. CNN called it a psychological unraveling live on television. Variety described it as the most human moment of Will Smith's career. Twitter called it a tragedy and a confession. In Los Angeles, Jada's phone buzzed nonstop. She sat in silence, staring at the footage on her screen, Joy's voice echoing. Maybe it wasn't about Chris at all. Maybe it was about her. Her face tightened. The hurt was there, but so was something else, confusion, maybe even guilt. In a quiet apartment across the country, Will sat by the window, the city lights of New York flickering like scattered stars outside. He hadn't spoken to anyone since he left the studio. His phone was still lighting up, friends, agents, producers, even Oprah's team, but he ignored them all. For the first time in months, he didn't want to fix the narrative. He just wanted silence. Then, from the hallway came a soft knock. It was Joy. He looked up, surprised. You again? She smiled faintly, holding 2 cups of tea. You look like you could use this. He hesitated before motioning for her to sit. She placed the cup beside him. I wasn't sure you'd still be here, she said. I wasn't sure I'd still be me, he replied quietly. For a long moment, they said nothing, just the low hum of the city below filling the space. Joy finally spoke. I've been doing this for a long time. I've had politicians scream at me, actors storm off, musicians curse me out. But what happened today, that was different. He nodded slowly. Yeah, it was real. She exhaled. I didn't mean to hurt you, Will. I meant to understand you. He smiled faintly. That's the problem with understanding. It always comes with a cost. Joy stared at him. You know what I think? I think people don't hate you because of what you did. They hate you because you remind them how easy it is to lose control. You showed them something they all hide. Will looked down at his hands. Then maybe that's my punishment. Joy shook her head. Or maybe it's your purpose. A pause. The kind that stretches between 2 people who suddenly realize they're both broken in their own way. Then Joy's phone buzzed again. Another headline alert flashing across the screen. She turned it toward him. Will Smith speaks his truth. Fans rally online in support. Thousands of comments were flooding in. He's human. We've all had our breaking point. Joy went too far, but maybe that's what he needed. That wasn't a meltdown. That was a man trying to breathe. Will stared at the screen, silent. For the first time, his expression softened. Not a smile, but something close to peace. He whispered, "Maybe people are finally listening." Joy sipped her tea, eyes distant. Or maybe they're just watching. But either way, you said what needed to be said. The city outside pulsed with life. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Will stood and walked to the window, looking out over the skyline. His reflection stared back at him. Not the movie star, not the broken man, just Will. He said quietly, "You know what I realized today? I don't need to be forgiven by the world. I just need to forgive myself." Joy nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's your comeback." He turned toward her. "No, that's my beginning." Outside, the street below glowed with camera lights. Paparazzi were still waiting, hoping for one more reaction. But Will didn't flinch. He reached for his phone, opened Instagram for the first time in hours, and typed a short caption under a photo of the city skyline. Sometimes the fall isn't the end. It's the moment you learn how to stand again. Will. Within minutes, the post went viral. Hundreds of thousands of comments poured in. Celebrities, fans, even critics began resharing it with one word: respect. Meanwhile, The View released an official statement. Today's episode featured a powerful and raw conversation with Will Smith. We stand with him in his journey toward healing and self-reflection. Joy Behar added her own tweet later that night. "I asked the questions the world wanted answers to. He gave the truth none of us were ready for." By morning, the internet had changed its tone. The same people who had mocked him hours before now called him brave. News outlets replayed his final words: "I'm done performing for forgiveness." Like a mantra of authenticity in a world addicted to spectacle. The clip became one of the most replayed moments of the year. And somewhere between the noise, the hate, and the healing, Will Smith began to rediscover what it meant to be human. Days later, Joy sat alone in the same studio where it all happened. The lights were dim, the chairs empty. She looked at the seat where Will had sat, and for the first time she smiled, not out of victory but out of respect. She whispered to herself, "Sometimes the hardest interviews are the ones that change you too." As the camera lights faded out, a single quote appeared across screens everywhere. One that came to define that unforgettable episode. "Pain doesn't destroy you. Hiding from it does." The audience, the media, and the world had witnessed more than an interview. They'd witnessed the collision of truth and fame, the shattering of masks, and the fragile beauty of redemption. And that's where it ends, not with applause, not with scandal, but with silence. The kind of silence that says everything. So now it's your turn. What do you think? Did Joy Behar go too far, or did Will Smith finally say what needed to be said? Let us know your thoughts down below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Stage View for more explosive, emotional, and cinematic stories from the world of fame, truth, and raw humanity. Because here at Stage View, we don't just tell stories. We make you feel them.